Week 2 of the Prismatic Draft League. Last week, half of the teams had the start to the season that they wanted, and the other half did not, but there is still, of course, plenty of time for everyone to get a better feel for their team, maybe make some changes if they want, whether it's their roster or their playstyle, and turn things around. This video, of course, will cover all of the 7 sets that happened, excluding my own, which was in Monday's video, so if you want to see how Halifax Masquerade Men versus West Coast Pincurchins turned out, if for some reason you haven't already, just go back to Monday's video and it's right there. Let's look at the standings as of the end of week 1. So as always, this is exactly the same table that was in Monday's video. The result of my own set this week is not reflected here, even though, again, you can just go see it. But of course, after 1 week of the season, there is not too much to see. There were 4 teams that swept their first set. The Big Mode Bellibolt, Ontario Minccinos, Varsity Farmboys, and Winchester Walreins all have not dropped a game yet, but that's just in 2 games in week 1. Still room for all kinds of things to happen as the season goes on. And before we get into the replays for this week, there are 3 trades to cover. There has not yet been a trade between 2 different teams, but the free agent market is pretty busy early in the season, and it starts with one that we've actually already covered on Monday, as the West Coast Pincurchins, of course, dropped Hisuian Quillfish for Leafeon. And again, I'll say one more time, if you haven't gone back and seen Leafeon's season debut, definitely check it out. That Pokemon looks like a threat. Up next, the Hisuian Houndstones dropped Stunky and picked up Duskull. So pretty small move around the margins of their roster, with the main core being intact, but with this team being set up nicely to play a lot of Trick Room game plans, I could definitely see Duskull making sense. It has a lot of the same support options that Dusclops does. Of course, the stats are not the same, and I don't think it gets all the same moves, but there may be some week where this Pokemon comes in handy, and I don't necessarily know what Stunky was bringing to the table. I mean, Poison and Dark typing is pretty decent, and Stunky gets I don't know, it has ways to poison opponents. It probably gets like Snarl or something. I think Skuntank gets... So, I don't know. It could bring some tools into opposing Psy Spam or something like that. But they have ways to cover that already, and I think Duskull is a pretty reasonable pickup. That said, I don't think this is a very high-impact roster spot all around. Finally, for this week, the Alberta Applin dropped Whiscash and picked up Tropius, so they got rid of one cool Gen 3 Pokemon that flies under the radar a lot of the time for a different one. And, I mean, Tropius just looks to me like they're leaning even harder into that Sun mode. It gets Chlorophyll, so they have 2 Chlorophyll users now, with the Tropius and the Ivysaur. I believe it also gets Harvest, and... does it get Solar Power? Am I remembering that right? I actually asked this in the Discord the other day, and someone told me what Tropius' 3rd ability is. It does get Solar Power. So all 3 of its abilities benefit from Sun, and it gives him another option for that fast Grass type. It has some support moves in its own right. I think it gets Tailwind. Can't remember whatever other supports it gets, but definitely some. But this team just continues to load up on grass and fire types, with the water part of the core no longer here, so not much mystery about how the Applin want to play. And with all that said, we'll see how the Applin play, along with 13 other teams, in just a moment as we cut to the replays. But as always, we do this part in chronological order, so no Alberta Applin just yet, they're coming up soon. But we're going to start here with the Sinistcha taking on the Tiny Crowns. The Sinistcha have what I've been calling one of the scariest Trick Room teams in this draft. I think when you have a core of Slowking, Hariyama, and Copperajah, that's pretty justifiable. Hariyama has a ton of stats that it's able to get under that base stat total limit by being slow, and it's sort of similar with Slowking and Copperajah. They have the Squawk ability. Does Green Squawk ability get Intimidate? It looks like it does, according to Showdown. So it can do that and Parting Shot and create openings for its teammates to maybe set up that Trick Room, maybe go for some other kind of setup. They also have potentially Redirection on the board with the Scovillain. And then Alolan Muck. So I do know one thing about this set, and I had forgotten actually that Scovillain gets Moody. That kind of answers what Robbie was alluding to when he showed up in the comments and said that I had no idea what was coming with this Scovillain. I do know that it is Moody Scovillain in this set. I'll just leak that now. I don't know whether they do the Power of Alchemy tech like Muck does with Smeargle on that one cheesy VGC team. But for the first time this season, I do now know that the Sinistcha at least have that option with the Scovillain and the Alolan Muck. Also, Scovillain can provide a redirection with Rage Powder, like I said, and you have some support from Squawkabilly and a strong Trick Room core. Looks like a scary team. On the Tiny Crown side, so Alolan Persian can definitely mess with a Trick Room mode. It's a little bit afraid of Hariyama, but maybe only a little bit with the Fur Coat boosting its resistance to physical damage. But overall, this is kind of that oddball mix of Pokemon that we've seen from the Crowns throughout the season so far. And I'm confident that they have a game plan in mind, but I just don't know what it is, and I think we'll have to watch the replays to find out. They do have some fake-out pressure with the Persian and the Raichu. They have some ways, again, to disrupt Trick Room offense. They have Arbok for Intimidate, so they can weaken at least one of the physical attackers on the other side, because you only get one clear amulet. Camerupt could be strong in an opposing Trick Room, or maybe there's a fast mode available with the Hisui and Lilligant. Lumineon is able to set Tailwind, but overall, yeah, this just looks like a well-rounded core of Pokemon, but I really can't figure out what the game plan is just at a glance, so let's jump in and see. As it is Raichu and Camerupt leading with Squawkabilly and leading against Squawkabilly and Slowking. Immediately I'm wondering whether the Raichu is going to keep up the habit of critting its teammates that we saw last week, but maybe it will have settled down now. Intimidate confirmed on the Squawkabilly, so this lead is probably looking to create an opening for Slowking to set Trick Room, although I wouldn't put it past Robbie to have some other plan. But we might see a fake out from the Raichu, and it'll be interesting to see whether the Slowking has a covert cloak to cover for that. It would make a lot of sense, given that there are multiple fake out users on the other side and possible, like, Snarl Persian. But yeah, we'll find out. Or we might find out. Squawkabilly goes straight for Final Gambit and just knocks out the Camerupt. And Squawkabilly is... it does have a lower base speed than Raichu, so good chance that it's Choice Scarfed here. Which makes sense. You get that fast Final Gambit. You also get a fast Parting Shot if you are going for that. It is also just possible that the Raichu is slow for some reason, but I think Scarf Squawkabilly is most likely, because I think you run speed on Raichu in most situations. Maybe into Trick Room you come up with some creative EV spread, but I'm going to guess Choice Scarf Squawkabilly until I see something different. Raichu goes for a Volt Switch into Slowking, not bothering with the Fake Out, maybe anticipating a Covert Cloak or some kind of Terra. Well, I guess it'd have to be Ghost Terra to stop Fake Out. I don't know, it's super likely. It might make sense. But anyway, it goes straight for the Volt Switch, does a little bit more than half. But if Slowking wants Trick Room here, it'll get it. It also gets its Citrus Berry. We see the Alolan Persian come in, but Slowking actually just goes for a Psychic into the Raichu slot. So Persian taking nothing from that thanks to the immunity. We see that Scovillain and Muck are the last two Pokemon for the Sinistcha. So it looks like the Moody tech with Muck is here this game, but we'll find out whether it actually works. Raichu is back in, and we do see the fake out this time into Scovillain. Actually, they just fake out both, but Scovillain, of course, will get its first Moody boost here. It's a special attack, lowering special defense, probably not ideal. Raichu goes for a Surf, does not crit its teammate this time, and Scovillain, despite the special attack boost, misses the knockout into Alolan Persian. Persian goes for a knockoff and KOs Scovillain. And I guess it's not Power of Alchemy Muck. So I guess it's not the Moody Muck tech after all. Okay. Well, in any case, Raichu and Persian are weak, but they're still here and they're able to be disruptive. Slowking goes for the Terra Grass, takes that Volt Switch pretty nicely, and that knockoff. Of course, we know that Slowking consumed a Citrus Berry already, so it doesn't have an item to be knocked off right now. Persian drops to Drain Punch, and we do now see the Trick Room with Slowking and Paralyzed Muck. Not bad, but Slowking will take a Fake Out here. Raichu gets knocked out, but Arbok has a free chance to attack Slowking. Goes for a Gunk Shot into that Grass typing, but misses. That's the downside of Gunk Shot, but we see it's Terra Ground Arbok. It'll survive a Psychic with that, and actually a knockoff as well. We see it's Rocky Helmet Arbok, and it does land the Gunk Shot this time. But Alolan Muck had a chance to be fully paralyzed there, but it doesn't, so it underspeeds Arbok and gets the KO. Kind of a wild game, but the Sinistcha do take game one here. It's not Power of Alchemy Muck is, well, defying expectations when it's paired with that Scovillain, but it still came through in this game. over to game 2, and we see Camerupt leading with Persian this time against Slowking and Muck. Slowking switching right out to Squawkabilly. That will, of course, be immune to ground, and if it's Earthquake Camerupt, you get an Intimidate into it. Muck goes straight for a Terra Fighting. Squawkabilly Choice Scarf confirmed as it's knocked off there. And Camerupt just clicks Eruption, knocks out Squawkabilly, does a lot to Muck. Muck eats the Figgy Berry, gets some health back, but a Drain Punch doesn't do too much to Persian off of Muck's attack stat and probably into Fur Coat. I guess it could be Technician. I haven't been paying close attention to the fake out damage, but in any case, it doesn't do very much. We get Hariyama coming in now. Camerupt goes straight for a Terra Ghost on the fake out, so not phased by that as Persian pivots out. Raichu comes in, fake out pressure back on the board on the crown side. That Eruption does so much damage before Camerupt is knocked out by a knockoff. And Hariyama gets its burn, but from the Flamemore. But one, it's under a lot of pressure here. It's outsped by these Pokemon, but also burn damage is going to mean it can't stick around much longer anyway. In any case, it gets out of there so that it's not just KO'd. Lilligant comes in and protects. Muck protects. Is Raichu just going to Volt Switch into Slowking? Nope, goes for Surf, which does not very much. There's the Volt Switch, but it's into Muck, gets the KO. Raichu pivoting out, Persian back in. The Persian Raichu pivot duo is doing a lot of work for the Crowns and something to watch out for throughout this season, I think. Lilligant goes for a close combat into Slowking, maybe anticipating the Terra Grass, maybe it doesn't have another move, maybe it attacked the Muck slot anticipating a switch or something, I don't know which it is. Slowking takes that nicely, eats its berry, gets Trick Room up, Hariyama's back. But Hariyama is forced to detect here, and that means it's going to take some burn. I mean, yeah, you can't let it take the fake out, but now it's going to take some burn damage. It only gets one chance to attack after that, and it doesn't actually get any chance to attack as the Persian shows Feint, which it has not revealed up to this point. Knockoff, U-turn, fake out, and Feint. Finishing the Hariyama off. Hariyama, no chance to attack whatsoever. Lilligant will drop to a Psychic here from the Slowking, but now you have Raichu in. And yeah, Slowking will be taken out, not quite taken out by the Volt Switch, but a knockoff from Persian will finish the job. Of course, Slowking unable to Terrasilize because Alolan Muck did earlier in the game. So yeah, solid adjustment from the Crowns there. The Camerupt landing the going for the Terra Ghost at just the right time, so was able to execute a big Eruption, do a ton of damage. And then the Crown's able to clean up, again, largely with the duo of Raichu and Alolan Persian pivoting around, both threatening fake out pressure, and then the Persian showing Feint as well. Very good stuff. And we'll see how the Sinistcha try to bounce back in Game 3. Camerupt leading with Raichu against Squawkabilly and Slowking. Okay? So Squawkabilly, correct me if I'm wrong, I think in Game 1 it used Final Gambit to one-shot the Camerupt, right? And then in Game 2, Camerupt was able to do a lot of damage with Eruption after showing the Terra Ghost. So Squawkabilly, we can see, is gone for Terra Ghost. It'll be immune to a possible fake out from Raichu. If it just goes for the Final Gambit play again, but Camerupt goes for Terra Ghost, that's a big opening for Camerupt. On the other hand, Slowking is not that afraid of an Eruption. So, I don't know. It's an interesting position for sure. Camerupt does go for the Terra Ghost. It is immune to the Final Gambit. It will get a chance to attack. Raichu Volt switching out on the Squawkabilly, bringing in the Persian. The Eruption will take out Squawkabilly, but yeah, not much damage to Slowking. Slowking sets Trick Room. Muck is here. Camerupt takes a lot from the Psychic and gets knocked out by a knockoff. So Camerupt not doing as much damage this game as last, but Alolan Persian is left free to go for a big knockoff into Slowking. And this time Slowking is still holding its berry when it takes the knockoff, so it gets that boosted damage for having an item, and it doesn't get to consume the berry. Slowking now very low. Raichu is back. Slowking forced out by the fake out pressure, but the fake out goes into Muck. And Persian U-turns on Scovillain. Gets a crit. Sure. I mean, if you're the Sinistcha, you now have Trick Room up for 3 more turns against 3 fast Pokemon, and they don't have Fake Out pressure on the board right now, so this turn is important, and you do have a chance to do a lot of damage. I don't know that these are necessarily the Pokemon to do it, especially with the Scovillain getting an attack boost instead of special attack this time, unless it's, I don't know Scovillain's stats, unless it's some kind of mixed Scovillain somehow, but Lilligant switches out to Persian, Raichu protects. You do have a chance to get... Okay, Flamethrower and Drain Punch both go into Raichu, so the Protect shuts it down. What I was going to say is, The flamethrower into the Lilligant slot is effectively targeting a weakness no matter what, because I think Fur Coat makes Persian effectively weak to fire. Am I mistaken about that? Tell me in the comments. I think that's how Fur Coat works. You get extra resistance to physical attacks, but functionally a weakness to fire. That said, I do sort of understand the way that Robbie played this. The Lilligant has been willing to click Protect in earlier games, and so I kind of thought it was going to Protect going into this turn, even, Monday morning quarterbacking here. So I might have made exactly the same double up into Raichu, but it is punished here as Persian gets in. It has its Fake Out Pressure or whatever it wants to go for. I mean, we know all its moves at this point, but yeah, Raichu nicely killing a turn of Trick Room with no damage there. Only 2 turns of Trick Room left. Scoville gets a special attack drop. That is unfortunate for the Sinistcha. Muck gets flinched by another Fake Out as Raichu takes very little from that Flamethrower, goes for a Surf, a little bit of chip damage, but that will kill the Trick Room. I think I was miscounting turns because of when I happened to be pausing, so that was actually the last turn. Whoops. Anyway, Slowking comes back in, but it's going to be hard for Slowking to get Trick Room up because we know it's in Volt Switch KO range. Okay, the Raichu actually went for Surf there, and U-turn from Persian. It actually doesn't get the KO on Slowking. Does the Slowking set Trick Room? Raichu gets knocked out by a knockoff. This is not over. Muck getting paralyzed could even be... I mean, it doesn't really matter in Trick Room because these other Pokemon are so slow, but... Okay, what am I doing? I'm getting confused. The Slowking just switched in on the Surf and U-turn, so no, it doesn't get to click Trick Room same turn. This is such a chaotic set, I'm getting a little bit lost here. Scoville switched out to Slowking. So now Slowking is under a ton of pressure. Scoville comes back in. And Muck drops to that close combat from Lilligant, and I don't think Scoville is pulling this one back. Nope, certainly not, as it gets knocked out by a knockoff there. Slowking comes back, but any damage on it, and it's in Volt Switch range. Oh, Raichu got KO'd, never mind. Any damage on it, and it doesn't matter. It's in close combat plus knockoff range. Okay, this one's been a little bit messy. I'm not going to redo it because part of the premise here is that I am watching the replays for the first time. I feel like I was going to have a game like this eventually. So, is what it is. But overall, the Tiny Crowns, putting in, again, playing a really strong pivoting game plan in Game 2, and then in Game 3, stalling out that Trick Room very nicely, mixing up the way that they played things. Again, I thought the Lilligant was going to protect that key turn, so I'm not surprised that Robbie apparently did too. But that one turn where the Raichu protected and prevented any damage from coming out made it so much easier for the Crowns to just tie this thing up nicely once the Trick Room was over, and they had nothing but fast Pokemon left. Slowking without his Citrus Berry, with the berry knocked off, just not able to stand up to all the damage that was coming out to from the other side. So some of this commentary got a little bit messy, but yeah, I'll tell you what, the gameplay wasn't. On either side, really, but very quality win there from the Tiny Crowns, for sure. Up next, we have the Winchester Walreins taking on the Alberta Applin. So this is where we will see the season debut for Tropius. The Applin not bringing a super sunny mode this time, actually. I mean, the Tropius still able to potentially... I mean, yeah, there's no Vulpix even. Still 3 fire types, though. The Tropius able to potentially go for some kind of sun-based game plan with Manual Sunny Day from Volbeat. We have the Breloom threatening fighting type damage into the various ice types on the other side, although actually the Walreins have only brought one of their ice types, and it's the one that's immune to fighting. But I could still see Breloom potentially disrupting a setup game plan with a Spore, or just like a well-timed, grass coverage into Vaporeon or something. Volbeat also potentially able to disrupt opponent's setup with Sunny Day, sure, but also Tailwind, and Encore and the like. And then we have the 3 fire types. The Flareon we saw trying to pull off a Guts game plan last week with the downside that it was carrying a Flame Orb and had to Terastallize to get itself burned. We'll see if it's made any kind of adjustment this week. And then Carkol and Magby are kind of wild cards, but I mean, Magby's nice for redirection, of course. On the Walrein side, we have actually, considering how snow-focused their draft looks, at least at first glance, this is a surprisingly unsnowy mode that they brought here, but I guess you just don't want to rely on the snow into a sun team. I mean, it makes perfect sense. But we have the Tauros, we have the Frostlass, we have the Vaporeon. So the Vaporeon and the Tauros give them a couple of different answers to opposing fire types, the kind of fire spam that we've seen from the Applin. The Vaporeon could be a tricky puzzle for the Applin to solve, but with Breloom and Tropius both here, they probably have offensive answers to it. But of course, they have to play around the Tauros as well, and that's why Fire and Water types have good synergy. We have Redirection on the board from the Sentret. And then Fracture and Donphan are very interesting. I mean, Donphan makes a lot of sense into possible fire spam. Bringing that Sturdy and able to just, I was going to say go for an Earthquake. There's no flying type on the Walreins side, but there could be just a Protect or a Flying Terror or an Air Balloon or something. Or the Donphan could just click High Horsepower. But I don't necessarily know what the Fracture is here for, but it can carry an Eviolite, it can set up to boost its damage, and it resists fire and grass. So honestly, it's a Pokemon that could put in a ton of work in this matchup if it's given the right position to work with. We see Volbeat leading with Magby. That's an interesting duo against Sentret and Fracture. So yeah, Fracture is the scariest offensive Pokemon on the board immediately. Volbeat and Magby both honestly pretty good support Pokemon for this format, but there's nothing on the field that they're supporting right now, so we'll see what the Applin are cooking up here. This is, of course, the coach who brought offensive Smeargle more often than not in last season, Season 7, so it could be Specs Volbeat for all I know, but let's find out. Okay, well, actually, the Sentret has Frisk, so we know it's Mental Herb Volbeat. Volbeat goes straight for a Tail Glow with Follow Me support. Fracture just sets up a Dragon Dance. Sentret knocks off Magby's Eviolite. No Flame Body Burn. Double Follow Me again. Volbeat just Tail Glowed up to +6, so that could be dangerous. But the Fracture goes for that +1 Dragon Claw, knocks out Magby without its Eviolite. Still no Flame Body Burn. It is still entirely possible that the Magby doesn't have Flame Body. Although, I don't think the Walreins have any Sleep on their roster, unless I'm forgetting something. I can't remember all the rosters off the top of my head, but we don't see a Abomasnow. They didn't bring a Abomasnow or Ice-Q this time. Or Zorua. And I'm blanking on their last two Pokemon, but I guess Abomasnow can have Grass Whistle. But no, most likely it's just Flame Body Magby that didn't activate here. Flareon comes in. Goes straight for a Terra Normal and protects, so I'm guessing it's carrying a Flame... I do actually know it's carrying a Flame Orb already. Like I said, I know some of what happened just from reading the Discord. Just like I knew that Volbeat was going to Baton Pass out to that Tropius and get Tropius to +6 special attack. That's pretty dangerous. Of course, there's no Sun on the board, so it still can't take advantage of Chlorophyll, but it should still hit pretty hard. And the Flareon will... It takes a lot from Dragon Claw, though. The Flareon will get its burn here. It gets boosted, Stab Facade with the normal Terra. No Tailwind, no Sun, no Chlorophyll. Tropius is slower than Fracture, and with the Redirector removed, it drops to a Poison Jab. Would also have dropped to a Dragon Claw, but hey, either one works. Style points, I guess, for Poison Jab. Fracture is KO'd back by Facade from Flareon, so if the Tropius had protected around that Poison Jab, it might have been an interesting position for the rest of this game. But as it is, we just see them trade KOs on their boosted attackers. Sentret chips Flareon a tiny bit, and the burn will as well. Flareon is an offensive threat. The Volbeat's back, but we see the Donphan should be well positioned here into this Flareon. Sentret gets knocked down to its Focus Sash by Facade. They did finally set the Sun up, but yeah, too late for Tropius to take advantage. We actually see the Donphan just go for Rock Slide, and doesn't do that much to Flareon. However, thanks to the Focus Sash, Sentret is able to redirect one more attack. It is a Solar Beam from this Volbeat, so we've seen all of Volbeat's moves now. It doesn't have Tailwind or Encore. But Donphan takes that Facade, KO's Flareon back with a high horsepower, and we know that the Volbeat's only attack is Solar Beam. That is super effective into both Vaporeon and Donphan, but not after the Dragon Terra from Vaporeon. Ice Beam crit doesn't matter. Volbeat's never winning this, as it can't even Tail Glow because it just has to attack to even try to keep up with the opponent's damage, but there's not really any way once the Vaporeon terrestrializes when we know that the Volbeat only has grass type coverage. So the Winchester Walreins take down game 1. The Fracture and Tropius and Flareon going at it was awesome to see. Great offensive showcase so far. We'll see if both teams can keep up the momentum here in game 2. It's Volbeat and Breloom for the Applin against Tauros and Frostlass. Volbeat switches out to Flareon. Frostlass goes for Frost Breath into Tauros and gives it +6 attack from Anger Point. Anger Point gives you +6 attack if you take a critical hit, and Frost Breath is a guaranteed critical hit attack. So side Frost Breath into Tauros. This is something people used in like one of the early Sword and Shield DLC formats, when of course Tauros was only a normal type, but you could Dynamax it, minimize the damage, and then throw off big max moves. Nice to see it again in Scarlet and Violet, as that +6 Flare Blitz does just wipe out the Breloom. The Volbeat comes in now next to Flareon. Flareon is not Terraslized, so it doesn't get burned. It Terraslizes now. They get Sun Up. Flareon doesn't protect, so both Pokemon will get speed dropped by this Icy Wind, and +6 Rock Slide from Tauros just takes out both of them. And what's the last Pokemon for the Applin? It is the Tropius. Tropius not showing Chlorophyll, as it is outsped by Frostlass, almost knocked out by single target Icy Wind, and Tauros Flare Blitz will finish the job. So just a absolute Anger Point Tauros sweep this week. And I'm going to acknowledge something here, because again, there actually, now that I look at it, were a fair few spoilers for this this set in the Discord this week. That's how it goes sometimes. This was a really interesting one to watch, so not surprising. I actually am pretty sure that I forgot or didn't clock when I was doing the draft recap that the Walreins had the Frostlass Tauros Anger Point strategy available to them. Even though I used Frostlass and Tauros back in whatever Sword and Shield format that was, I'm pretty sure I missed this. And the reason, I think, is just that it being a Paldean Tauros threw me off. So I'm kind of glad that they brought it this week, because you know, maybe we're going to play at some point this season, and maybe I would have forgotten that this was an option for them if not for seeing it this week. Anyway, a little bit of an upside for me to watching all these replays. We move now to the Hisuian Houndstones taking on Pendragon United. Very pleasant color-coordinated team on the United side. I don't know whether that's intentional in terms of Pokemon order or not, but Crawdont really kind of the only outlier there. Anyway, before I get too distracted by that, they do have the Rain option here with the Pelipper, able to boost Water-type attacks from the Crawdont, and they could even run like Thunder, Vikavolt if they want, and of course Pelipper and Vikavolt can nicely help Crawdont handle opposing... well, there's no Grass-type on the other side, but Grass Terra certainly. Glaceon, I don't know, it's a good special attacker. They have Redirection from Pachirisu. I don't know what Mischievous does here. Moving on. On the Houndstone side, we have possible Trick Room mode with Bronzong and Piloswine. Of course, Bronzong gets Levitate, so Piloswine can click Earthquake comfortably next to it. It also has two Flying-type teammates in Flamigo and Vivillon. Neither one of those is as eager to play in Trick Room, but... you know, if you have Flamigo, I don't know, threatening a big close combat into the Crawdont, and then the Mamoswine can land an attack into something else, then you're in a pretty good position there. Vivillon, of course, also able to set Tailwind or Quick Sleep Powder. It can run Friend Guard, which can make Piloswine super bulky, with Piloswine potentially also having an Eviolite. So a few combos available there. Wigglytuff and Indeedee are interesting. They're just pretty good Pokemon. I don't necessarily know the game plan for this one either. Let's find out together. I'm pretty sure I have not been spoiled nearly as hard on any of the remaining sets as I was for the Walreins Applin one, and I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek when I talk about spoilers. I could choose not to read them. I just don't really bother with that. But of course, I always save the replays for the video. Anyway. Male Indeedee leading with Flamigo against Mischievous and Pelipper. Rain and Psychic Terrain are up. Indeedee just protects turn 1 as Pelipper goes for a Wide Guard, looking to stop an Expanding Force, or, well, probably just an Expanding Force in this position. Flamigo sets Tailwind, so Vivillon probably is freed from having to carry Tailwind if Flamigo has it in this set, and Flamigo doesn't take too much from Mischievous Power Gem. Mischievous doesn't hit super hard, and Flamigo is, of course... only taking neutral damage from that thanks to its fighting typing. Flamigo goes straight for a close combat into Mischievous. Flamigo, of course, Co-Star is the ability it's best known for, but it does also get Scrappy, which kind of was its niche in Regulation H. And way back in my first PDL season, Season 2, like two full seasons before I was uploading here, I had Flamigo in my draft, and I brought Scrafty. I had co-star strategies with Flamigo, but I also brought Scrappy once or twice and caught people off guard. Anyway, Mischievous actually takes that pretty well, probably with an Eviolite, but yeah, that's why the fighting type attack worked on it. Anyway, Indeedee goes for an Encore into Pelipper, so Pelipper is now locked into Wide Guard, unable to attack. Mischievous sets Trick Room, though, turning the speed control situation on its head. It's always awkward when you set Tailwind and then the opponent sets Trick Room, because you know none of your Pokemon are underspeeding them. That said, the Pelipper wants to get out of there. It's not much use for it to just click Wide Guard for the next few turns. And Vikavolt comes in and shows Room Service. So this Vikavolt is going to be the slowest Pokemon on the field, even without Tailwind on the other side. But there's not much damage for United this turn, as the Mischievous is just not that strong, and the Pelipper had to switch out. However, the Houndstones, they don't do any damage with the Indeedee slot. It might be that Expanding Force and or Hyper Voice is all they have to attack, and I think the Pelipper might stay in and click Wide Guard. Anyway, they don't get to do very much with a fairly passive turn on the other side, as they do switch the Indeedee out to Piloswine, but we'll see what Flamigo does. Piloswine takes that Power Gem very nicely. Flamigo just goes for close combat into the Pelipper slot, maybe looking to catch something else coming in. I mean, if you get Crawdaunt or Glaceon, then that close combat's going to do a ton of damage, so it makes a lot of sense. But they do get Vikavolt instead, and of course Bug resists Fighting. I feel like that might be a relatively obscure part of the type chart, but it is the case. Bug and Fighting resist each other. That's not doing too much there. Vikavolt going for a Terra Poison. And a Thunderbolt into Flamigo. Flamigo protects around it as Mischievous goes for Imprison. So, okay. Mischievous carrying... What moves have we seen? We haven't seen his fourth move yet. Mischievous carrying Imprison makes a lot of sense here with Trick Room, because in a dynamic speed control game like this, where there are multiple ways that your opponent can handle the speed control, it can be very useful to have some measure of control, right? Mischievous clicking Imprison and probably carrying an Eviolite means that until it's removed from the field, and it's fairly bulky and hard to remove, you decide whether Trick Room goes up or not, and your opponent also can't reverse Trick Room by clicking Trick Room with a different Pokemon. That much I understand. That's a really good speed control attack in a matchup like that. I'm less clear on why Mischievous is clicking Imprison here. Actually, you know what? I do have a hunch. I don't... My first thought was, are they really worried about, say, Bronzong coming in and reversing the Trick Room, or Indeedee, but that's pretty... You know, that's not happening this turn regardless. I think Mischievous's last move is Protect. I think Mischievous... We haven't seen Mischievous's fourth move. I don't think it's Shadow Ball, because there are multiple opportunities where Shadow Ball just does more damage than Power Gem. They could have clicked that a bunch of times already. I think there's no reason that they ever clicked Power Gem so far if they have Shadow Ball. I think Mischievous's last move is Protect, and it's trying to use Imprison to protect the opponents from... to prevent the opponents from protecting, so that Vikavolt can get KOs while Trick Room is still up. Yeah, now that I spell all that out, I think that's pretty straightforward and definitely what's going on here. Of course, Flamigo is able to execute its move before the Imprison. If it were Protect, that would be the case anyway because of the boosted priority, but in fact this Flamigo is running Detect, and this is why you run Detect instead of Protect in VGC, because fewer Pokemon get it, and in the rare case where you run into an Imprison Protect strategy. Of course, Detect is not literally the same move as Protect, so it is not sealed by the Imprison. So that, I think, is what's going on here, and it's kind of cool to actually see that interaction come out. As much as it's optimal to run Detect a lot of the time on Pokemon that learn it, it's pretty rare that you actually run into the situation where it's preferable. And it can feel a little bit silly because Protect has more PP, but yeah, this Mischievous, I think, just tried to seal Protect, and it's not going to work on Flamigo. That said, Flamigo used Protect here, so it's in danger from this Vikavolt all the same next turn. But solid offensive game plan from United, just having the Vikavolt go crazy in Trick Room with the Room Service. You love to see it. Flamigo does switch out here to Bronzong. Bronzong takes half from a Bug Buzz. And Piloswine goes for high horsepower to Mischievous. It's possible that was a misclick or something, I don't know, but I'm a little bit amused by the idea that maybe this coach is just really used to facing Fluttermane and forgot that baby present-day Fluttermane gets Levitate. In any case, no damage there. Power Gem to Bronzong, almost no damage. Last turn of Trick Room, and for all that I've been talking up this Vikavolt, it actually hasn't done a ton yet, but it will finish the Bronzong off here with a Bug Buzz. Mischievous switches out, And Rock Slide does quite a bit into both of these Pokemon with Pelipper coming in. And now there's Indeedee. There's no Trick Room. Pelipper, I think the Houndstones here are anticipating a wide guard. And if I'm right that this Indeedee only has spread moves, they're just trying to play around that. And I guess use Piloswine to take out the Vikavolt, given that's the main offensive threat remaining. But the Pelipper does not go for wide guard. It just knocks out Piloswine while Indeedee protects. Solid play again from Pendragon United there. And now we have Flamigo and Indeedee remaining on the Houndstone side. Indeedee shows the Fairy Terra, double protect on the other side. Flamigo goes for a close combat into Vikavolt. How much does that do? Because it was resisted before and it still is now, but it looks like it would KO. Vikavolt protecting, however. Indeedee shows Expanding Force. I mean, there's still a lot of offense on the board here for the Houndstones. Yeah, the Mischievous switches in, but because of the Scrappy, it gets knocked out. And actually, without Trick Room up, that Vikavolt is in danger. Pelipper gets Encored into Protect. It cannot click Wide Guard anymore. So an Expanding Force... okay, they can double Protect here, and they do. That'll kill one more turn of Psychic Terrain. There's still another one after that, and Expanding Force, even single target, will take out this Vikavolt no problem. Flamigo goes for close combat into Pelipper. Pelipper gets the double protect, but Pelipper is still only able to protect. We see that as Life Orb Indeedee. But United had Crawdaunt in the back the whole time. I'll be honest, this had such an endgame look to it, I forgot that they had a whole other Pokemon. Crawdaunt going for an Aqua Jet into defense lowered Flamigo. And I feel like that not KOing probably just decides the whole game, right? The Pelipper got free of its Encore, so it can click Wide Guard now, but Expanding Force is not a spread move anymore. And Flamigo can just hit back with this close combat. Will we see a Focus Sash on the Crawdaunt? No. Indeedee Encores the Pelipper into Wide Guard. I mean, it could have just... I think it could have just clicked Expanding Force there, but it doesn't matter. Pelipper drops to a close combat. And for all that I talked up the Vikavolt Trick Room game plan from United, and I do like it, and I do think it has a chance to do some real damage later in this set, let's show some appreciation to Flamigo, which put in a ton of work in this game. Showing off what it can do with Scrappy, and again, giving me a chance to talk about Detect, the use of which confused the heck out of me when I was a new VGC player, because I thought it was just worse than Protect. Let's jump to game 2. Pachirisu leading this time with Pelipper against Flamigo and Vivillon. So both coaches mixing things up after the slugfest that was game 1. But the Flamigo is here looking to do some damage again. It will, of course, be not in a great position to do that against Pelipper and Pachirisu. Pelipper goes for Protect. Pachirisu goes for Nuzzle into Flamigo. That is, of course... Oh. Pelipper goes for Pachirisu. Gonna try that again. Pachirisu goes for Nuzzle into Flamigo. That is, of course, a guaranteed para, is what I was going to say. Nuzzle does a tiny bit of physical damage and paralyzes the target 100% of the time. The only way that the Flamigo, which we know has Scrappy, it doesn't get Limber anyway, which did not Terastallize, the only way that it is not paralyzed here is if it's holding a Covert Cloak. Because while the paralysis is a 100% chance, it is a secondary effect of Nuzzle. So, Covert Cloak Flamigo confirmed. I thought it was just going to be ruined by that para, but I was mistaken. Nice prep there from the Houndstones. Vivillon getting the Quiver Dance off. Vivillon would really not have liked to take a Nuzzle, given that we now know that it doesn't have a Covert Cloak. Actually, it gets Shield Dust, which I think is Covert Cloak the ability. So it's possible that the Nuzzle para was just never happening in this position. Shield Dust is, I'm sure, the least used Vivillon ability, but it is possible that they have it. But it does just get a free Quiver Dance there, as the Nuzzle just chips the Flamigo a tiny bit. Flamigo able to set Tailwind. There's no Trick Room on the board right now. Looks like a strong start to this game for the Houndstones. Pachirisu redirects a Hurricane, which of course will not miss in the rain. Flamigo went for Brave Bird. So double flying type attacks, probably looking for the KO into Pelipper. Pachirisu with a well-timed follow me there. That does seem kind of risky from the Houndstones side to go for that double flying damage, huh? But I mean, maybe they just thought it would KO anyway. But it does get redirected and not KO. Pelipper gets a Hurricane into Flamigo and knocks it out. There will be no Flamigo sweep this game. Piloswine comes in. Vivillon goes for another Quiver Dance. takes a Nuzzle. It is running Shield Dust. That is very cool prep from the Houndstones, leading with 2 Pokemon that are both immune to the Nuzzle para. Anyway, Pilot One Rock Slide takes out Pachirisu. No need to worry about redirection or anything. However, +2 special defense Vivillon, right? +2. How far back did I go? I thought I... What are we doing this week? I guess I was still on turn 3. +2 special defense Vivillon. Yep, does drop to a Hurricane from the Pelipper. So Pachirisu's not an issue anymore, but while the Houndstones have been dealing with it, that Pelipper has done so much damage, and of course it's threatening the Weather Ball into Piloswine. Crawdaunt comes in, a lot of water type damage on the board, also the option of a knockoff or something into Indeedee. And Piloswine, it is in Tailwind, but I mean, how fast is it? Goes for Terra Dragon. Okay, that water type damage not as dangerous as it was all of a sudden. But it is still Rain Boost. It is still a Crawdaunt. Terra Water is going to do a lot here. Pelipper goes for Wide Guard. Crawdaunt takes a high horsepower. It is slower than Piloswine while Piloswine is in Tailwind, but this is the last turn of Tailwind. Well, Liquidation does a little bit less than half. So yeah, the Dragon Terra coming in handy there. Pelipper, I'm getting mixed up by these P names. Pelipper goes for the Wide Guard, makes sense. The Indeedee has shown every sign that it only has spread attacks, and I think we do get that confirmed now with the Dazzling Gleam. I think that means we've seen all of its moves. Liquidation chips Piloswine, but it's only a 3-hit KO, but Piloswine went for a Rock Slide this turn. It will be stopped by the Wide Guard. Pelipper clicks Wide Guard again. Gets chipped by an Ice Shard, but survives. Crawdaunt locked into Liquidation, but I do not think it cares about that. As, yeah, with 2 more turns of Psychic Terrain, Wide Guard and Liquidation into Indeedee is just not something that the Houndstones have any answer for. So the Flamigo went crazy in Game 1. In Game 2, I really did like the double Paralysis immunity tech, but having to focus down on the Pachirisu, and critically, the Pachirisu surviving those 2 flying attacks on, I think, turn 2, created openings for Pelipper to get 2 quick KOs. And then the Crawdaunt was just doing too much damage with the Water Terra in the end game, even as Piloswine terastallized into a resistance. It's been a wild set so far. I'm really enjoying it. Let's see what they each come up with in Game 3. We see Pelipper leading with Pachirisu once again against Flamigo and Indeedee. So I believe that's the Game 1 lead for the Houndstones and the Game 2 lead for United. Indeedee just switches straight out to Wigglytuff. It wants no part of this Pelipper. But, funnily enough, the Pachirisu we see is clicking Electric Terrain. It's actually going to turn Expanding Force into a single target attack by itself here. So Indeedee is no longer hard-walled by Wide Guard anymore. However, of course, Indeedee does not get the Psychic Terrain boost on its Expanding Force. And in any case, you can probably safely guess that Indeedee is not going to try to attack when it's in a position that's worked out so badly for it before. In fact, that switch was probably reasonably predictable from the United side of things. Electric Terrain going up. Pelipper takes a lot from Flamigo's Brave Bird. But Flamigo gets knocked out back by a Hurricane. Pelipper's put in a lot of work this set. I feel like I've said that already. Indeedee does get the Psychic Terrain right back up. But, I mean, Pachirisu could click Electric Terrain again if it wants. Indeedee just protecting here. Indeedee, I think, really scared of this Wide Guard. But we'll see what Wigglytuff does. This is the first we've seen of it in this set. It'll get paralyzed by this Nuzzle. I know that for sure this time because Covert Cloak is already accounted for. And it goes for a Dazzling Gleam into a Wide Guard. That Wide Guard Pelipper has been doing so much this set. And Pachirisu just going for Super Fang into Wigglytuff. Pachirisu not giving Indeedee the single target Expanding Force anymore. Might want to think about it now as Pelipper is knocked down by a Wigglytuff Energy Ball. Vikavolt coming in. Wigglytuff fully paralyzed. Vikavolt protected this turn anyway. Pachirisu just goes for Nuzzle into Indeedee. Gets a Para. So all of a sudden, with no Trick Room on the board, the speed advantage should belong to United. Pachirisu takes a ton from that Expanding Force, but not so much that it can't go for Electric Terrain once again. And I don't think Vikavolt... Okay, I can never remember this interaction. For a terrain damage boost, does it matter that the user is on the terrain or that the target is on the terrain? Because Vikavolt has Levitate. It is not grounded. So I'm not sure whether it gets this boost or not. I think we're going to do a Bulbapedia check after the game. In any case, Thunderbolt does a lot to Wigglytuff, but it doesn't KO. Indeedee, however, is fully paralyzed. Wigglytuff knocks out Pachirisu, but only does a little bit to Vikavolt. And here is that dreaded Crawdaunt once again. comfortably positioned in the end game to do a ton of damage into these paralyzed Pokemon that do not resist his water type attacks. Vikavolt goes for the Terra Poison, which is actually kind of interesting because Wigglytuff is knocked out here by Groudon's knockoff. Groudon targeting the Wigglytuff. Vikavolt has now terrestrialized into a weakness to Expanding Force. So sometimes you kind of just get your wires crossed as a player, and you answer the same thing in multiple ways, and it actually turns out counterproductive. I don't know if that's what happened here. Maybe there's some really good reason that the Vikavolt terrestrialized. Maybe they just anticipate that Indeedee is clicking Dazzling Gleam and want to make sure they resist it with something. In fact, that's probably what it is. But it did look a little bit odd at face value. Thunderbolt goes into Indeedee, does a ton of damage, and yeah, I guess you just need to get Vikavolt through this turn, and then you win on the next turn. So the Poison Terra is fine. I retract anything critical of that I said. Vikavolt goes for a Struggle Bug. It is getting pretty low here, so yeah, the Poison Terra was actually just good. You wanted to minimize the damage from Dazzling Gleam. Bronzong is the Pokemon in the back for the Houndstones. No Piloswine this time. And Bronzong will take a lot from this Bug Buzz. We already saw that Body Press doesn't do much back. It goes for Iron Defense, but I think it's too little too late. Neither Pokemon is grounded, so the Electric Terrain definitely makes no difference to the damage. Also, the Vikavolt is going for Bug Buzz, not Thunderbolt. Honestly, Thunderbolt might be optimal there just because you have a chance to para, full para, but it doesn't really matter. As the Bronzong just doesn't have... Yeah, the Bronzong is the last Pokemon for the Houndstones, just doesn't have enough damage. Maybe Piloswine could have won this game, but they left the Piloswine behind this time. And I don't really blame them. It was in some difficult positions earlier that were not super convincing, especially when it had to terrestrialize to get through Game 2, and then it got 3-hit KO'd by the Groudon anyway. But the Vikavolt, after being largely shut down in Game 1, does finally get to put in work in Game 3 and close out this set. And this was a really good set. This has to be one of my favorites so far early in the season. Both teams just trading blows back and forth, bringing out wild techs. I mean, that's what you love to see in Draft League. And we're just going to do a quick Electric Terrain. I don't have to specify that I'm looking for the Pokemon thing in this search, right? Electric Terrain should be fine. Okay. The attacker has to be grounded. So Vikavolt having levitated does mean that it doesn't get the damage boost. But I mean, it's still doing plenty of damage. Now we have I keep saying I keep thinking Marvelous Bridge Malamars. I keep catching myself about to say Marvelous Bridge Malamars. We have the Southern-style Grovyles taking on, of course, my opponent from last week, the Iridescent Terapagos. And this Iridescent Terapagos lineup is something. There's no Raichu and Pincurchin this week. So obviously it's a boring lineup. No, just kidding. But what a mix of Pokemon that this BST cap format has imposed on everyone. They have... so given that the Grovyles have some manual sun modes that they can run if they want to, I think the Snover is probably here largely to mess with that. But of course it also is threatening a Blizzard into... The Grovyles have 3 grass types in this lineup. I think they might have even more than that on their roster. Even just an Ice Shard from the Snover will do a ton of damage to Jumpluff, Sawsbuck, or Grovyle, all of which have abilities that can boost their speed and can be very fast to begin with. So yeah, even just Ice Shard Snover I think makes a ton of sense and is a really dangerous offensive check into some of what the Grovyles have available. Then you just have a strong mix of Pokemon with Flapple, Tauros, and Clefable. Clefable able to redirect and yeah, disrupt some possible support plays from Pokemon like Jumpluff. Tauros able to be an immediate offensive threat to Pokemon like Sawsbuck if the conditions are right. Certainly Charmeleon and Minccino. I forgot that the Grovyles have Minccino. There's Firewater Grass Core with the Flapple, Tauros, and Oricorio. Of course, the Oricorio put in a lot of work against me last week, and I don't know what Pikachu does in this matchup, but I hope we see Pikachu do something. I mean, it gets Fake Out and Electro Web and Nuzzle and all that stuff, and it actually hits reasonably hard with the Light Ball. On the Grovyles side, there is quite possibly a manual sun mode here, as we do see Jumpluff, Sawsbuck, and Charmeleon. Charmeleon is no Charizard, but it does get Solar Power. Sawsbuck gets Chlorophyll. Sawsbuck also could be running Serene Grace with Headbutt for a 60% flinch chance. Riolu could use Coaching to boost Sawsbuck's physical damage. with Chlorophyll or with Serene Grace. Grovyle and Charmeleon both being here means there's a possibility of a Sea of Fire combo, and that little bit of extra residual damage could well make the difference here. And I have no idea what Mincino is here for. Anyway, let's go. Clefable and Oricorio leading against Jumpluff and Riolu. Jumpluff goes straight for Terra Electric. Riolu goes straight for a Swords Dance. I did not see that coming. But Oricorio, of course, with Dancer will copy the Swords Dance. That's pretty funny. I don't think it's very likely that +2 attack Oricorio will matter here, but honestly, non-zero chance that it's carrying Baton Pass and goes out to Tauros or Flapple, or even Pikachu. There's a lot of funny potential here, but no guarantee that it actually does anything at all. I don't think they brought a tech for Swords Dance Riolu. If they did, that's some great prep. Anyway, Jumpluff sets Tailwind. Oricorio goes for Quiver Dance. That could be Baton Pass Oricorio. There are so many funny possibilities here, but we'll have to wait and see. Follow me, Strength Sap into Clefable, and Crunch into Clefable. So yeah, Riolu gets redirected there, and Clefable is a Fairy type. I'm not too worried about that damage, and we'll see what the Oricorio is an opening to do. Who knows what? It actually just goes for Air Slash into Riolu, knocks it down to a Focus Sash. But Riolu, of course, in a tough position here. Clefable should take that Energy Ball just fine from Jumpluff. Yeah, it's not very much damage even with a crit. And the Grovyles just don't have very much power on the board right now, except that Riolu is a +2 attack. I mean, that's not nothing. We know that Riolu doesn't have amazing stats, but we know it can do some damage. We saw it do that at times in past seasons. The problem, of course, is Clefable resists its stab. We see that as Crunch for coverage. Clefable resists that too. Unless it happens to be carrying a Steel-type attack and no stab. It's just not well positioned to do damage into Clefable, so... I mean, I guess the more concise way to say that is the Grovyles just don't have any threat into Clefable on the board right now, and that is giving them trouble. Oricorio goes for a Revelation Dance and Riolu. Riolu protects around it. Energy Ball into Clefable. I mean, they could fish for special defense drops, but they don't get one here. Clefable shows a Citrus Berry. But Clefable not going for Follow Me this turn means that Riolu does get to land a Crunch into Oricorio. It does half before Riolu drops the Revelation Dance, and Clefable sets a Light Screen. Okay. Charmeleon comes in. Again, Charmeleon and Jumpluff. There could be Sunny Day and Solar Power boosted fire attacks coming out, but into a Fire Resist and Redirection if they want to go that route with Light Screen up, it's probably just not enough damage. Also, Oricorio, of course, is boosted special defense. In any case, there is no Sunny Day, and Charmeleon... Well, Charmeleon goes before Jumpluff. There could be a Sunny Day, but Charmeleon apparently is faster than Jumpluff. Maybe it's Scarfed, I don't know. And it misses his Heat Wave on both targets. That's pretty unfortunate, but I don't think it was doing very much anyway. Jumpluff gets a lot of chip from that Revelation Dance. Jumpluff setting Tailwind. Still no sign of a Sunny Day. It is possible that it doesn't have it, as we've seen Tailwind, Strength Sap, and Energy Ball so far. Clefable showing Life Dew, and yeah, I don't... It's hard to see anything removing this Oricorio at this point. Double Miss is wild, no doubt, absolutely, but this Heat Wave just did 8% to Oricorio, and with Clefable showing the Life Dew, yeah, there is just not enough damage on the Grovyle side. That said, with Jumpluff going down here, they never did set Sun up, but we'll see what their last Pokemon is. The problem is, I was going to say if it's Sawsbuck, there might be a chance. The problem is they've Terastallized already, so Sawsbuck is weak to Revelation Dance. It's not going to take that very well. It probably takes more than one turn to flinch through Clefable, and you can't flinch through Oricorio if Clefable is clicking Follow Me. So I don't see an out for the Grovyles here, and their last Pokemon being Grovyle, I think, will further confirm that. Heat Wave misses into Clefable. Grovyle goes for a Normal-type Terra Blast, but again, the combined damage is just not very much. Can't really say that the miss mattered. And Charmeleon will drop to... nothing here because it dodges an Air Slash. Oh, okay, wait. If Charmeleon dodges every attack, then it can still win. It actually got Clefable, I think, into burn damage range. Oh, not quite. 6%. But Charmeleon does get a KO here, so that's something. But they never did manage to remove the Oricorio. And trust me, I know the feeling. There's a real similarity to Game 1 of Week 1 for me here, as I just got wrecked by that same Oricorio. But let's see what the Grovyles bring against it in Game 2. They definitely need more ways to threaten it. Of course, the problem is if you focus on threatening the Oricorio, then you potentially open yourself up to another mode. As we see here, no Oricorio in the lead for the Terapagos. Instead, they lead with 2 Pokemon we didn't see in Game 1, Tauros and Pikachu. They immediately get an Intimidate into Sawsbuck. And Minccinos is here. I don't know what it does. We'll find out. Fake Out. Whoa, that Fake Out did a lot to Sawsbuck. Like I said, Light Ball Pikachu, boosted attack. I'm sure is what that is. Sawsbuck does flinch. Mincino just drops to a close combat. We don't find out what it does. At least in this game. Bye, Mincino. Tauros switching out here against 2 grass types. Jumpluff will land a Strength Sap into Oricorio, but Oricorio doesn't really care about its attack stat. Last game we saw Oricorio use Quiver Dance, Revelation Dance, Air Slash. Did we see its last move? I do not remember. I think the Swords Dance Baton Pass Dream was never real, though. Doesn't matter in this position anyway. Sawsbuck goes for a Horn Leech into Pikachu. It does a lot of damage and gets Sawsbuck back to 100% HP. Pikachu will Volt Switch out against Jumpluff, and now we see the Clefable Oricorio duo once again. Jumpluff setting Tailwind. Sawsbuck, okay, it does a third to Clefable with Headbutt. If you have a Terra type that covers for the Oricorio's damage, so like, is there a type that resists fire and flying? I don't think there is. Oh yeah, Rock. I guess Terra Rock would be ideal here, but I mean, there are a lot of other reasons that the Sawsbuck might not have that. But even just neutral to both of those, you might be able to flinch through Clefable, which is a little bit of fortune if you're running Serene Grace, and I don't know whether it's Serene Grace or Chlorophyll, but I mean, given that the Jumpluff has never clicked Sunny Day, I'm not sure they have any Sun on this team at all, so it could be Serene Grace Sawsbuck, it could flinch through Clefable, it could have a Terra type that's useful here. That's all totally reasonable. I know it sounds like I'm saying if this, but that is a completely plausible line based on what I know right now in this position. Oricorio sets up a Quiver Dance. We don't see a Terra. We do see a Terra now from the Sawsbuck. It's normal. Clefable will finally take a special defense drop from Energy Ball, so Jumpluff... at that range, I don't think Jumpluff knocks it out next turn. Oricorio is still setting up that Quiver Dance. Clefable switches out. Sawsbuck taking another Intimidate here is a little bit rough for the Grovyles. On the other hand, that Energy Ball did good damage to the Tauros. Sawsbuck goes for Headbutt into Oricorio. It does get a flinch, but yeah, after 2 Intimidates, the damage is pretty reduced. We see Terra bug Tauros even after the special defense drop. It still takes that Energy Ball very nicely. That is an interesting Terra type here. You obviously don't want to be clicking that in front of Charmeleon, but yeah, it does get Tauros past. What do I think Terra Bug is for? Maybe it's to threaten the Calyrex in some way. Obviously there's no Calyrex in this game, but the Grovyles do have it on their roster. Yeah, there's definitely some interesting tech there that we're not going to see in full in this game, because I think it is in part for the Psy Spam stuff, but it does also get Tauros past this Jumpluff Energy Ball. Body Slam from Sawsbuck could paralyze the Oricorio, but it doesn't, and Jumpluff gets knocked out. Tailwind is gone. Bug Terra Blast knocks Sawsbuck down to 2%. Charmeleon is last. If it is Scarf Charmeleon, then... I mean, we'll see if Tauros has Aqua Jet, probably, but... Oricorio goes first with Revelation Dance, knocks out Sawsbuck. We do see the Heat Wave. It misses the Tauros. That's pretty unfortunate for the Grovyles, but I think Charmeleon loses to Oricorio anyway. And Tauros just going for Bug Terra Blast there makes me think it's running a Choice Band or something. But in any case, Charmeleon will drop to a Revelation Dance. So Oricorio is... of course, that Pokemon went undrafted. It was a pre-season trade by the Terapagos, and it has put in a ton of work in, 3 of their 4 game wins so far this season? Oricorio is, yeah, an undrafted Pokemon, but clearly a threat. Call it the Fred Van Vliet of this season, I guess, as neither I nor the Southern-style Grovyles have solved it. We'll see if their next opponent does. This one's running long, isn't it? I don't even know how many are left. We've got the Ontario Minccinos here taking on the varsity Farmboys. The Minccinos have possible Perish Trap stuff, totally plausible Perish Trap stuff with Gothorita, Politoed, Furret, and Torracat. Totally plausible Trick Room stuff with Mimikyu or Gothorita setting Trick Room, Politoed setting up Rain, Clawitzer going wild with slow rain-boosted water-type attacks. Those are the two main things that I see here, but it's a fairly flexible team. There's some other ways that they can play it. They have redirection. They have potentially double fake-out with Gothorita and Torracat, so a lot of ways to frustrate their opponent potentially. On the Farmboys side, Hisuian Electrode is probably here to be a threat into Politoed and Clawitzer, and of course it can at least get some chip with Electro Web. I think it gets Electro Web, get around, follow me that way. It can have land an extremely fast taunt into something like Gothorita or Furrets, so a few things it can do in this matchup, but could be tricky to position. Altaria can turn off Weather with Cloud9. Reuniclus can function nicely in Trick Room, as can Clodsire, so both of these teams look like they might want Trick Room, but it's not necessarily a given that they do. But I think it makes a lot of sense on the Farmboys side, because you also have Lantern able to be an offensive threat into at least half of the Minccinos side here, right? With super effective stabs into all of Torracat, Clawitzer, and Politoed. I don't necessarily know all the speed interactions here. This could be one where we see room service on at least one team in this set, but we'll just have to jump in and see how they figured out the speed interactions on both sides here. We see Clawitzer leading with Politoed, so just going for that rain-boosted offense immediately, it looks like. However, they're facing Lantern and Clodsire. Both of these Pokemon get water absorbed, so probably at least one of them is immune to water. I think in this matchup it's a good chance that both of them are. And the Lantern, of course, is an offensive threat. But we do see an early Terra from the Minccinos. Clawitzer going straight for that Dragon Terra. Lantern clicking Discharge. Clodsire is immune. Clawitzer doesn't take very much and does not get paralyzed, but it does land a big, now stab boosted Dragon Pulse into the Clawitzer, into the Clodsire, I mean. What's with all the similar names this week? We see that it's Life Orb Clawitzer. Yeah, it's not messing around here with Water Absorb. And it doesn't take too much from the Clodsire Stomping Tantrum either. Politoed will finish Clodsire off with an Ice Beam. That frees Clawitzer to go for a big Dragon Pulse into Lantern. Lantern clicks Discharge. Doesn't do all that much to Politoed. I really am rooting for Lantern to do well this league. In this league. It's another sort of old, not quite one of my favorites, but I like it a lot, Pokemon from my childhood, but not exactly showing a ton of power here. Of course, maybe things play out differently if it gets a little bit luckier with that 30% paralysis rate. Of course, there could be a Covert Cloak on one of these, I don't know. Anyway, Clawitzer lands that Dragon Pulse. Lantern does show its tankiness pretty nicely. It takes that well. Clawitzer drops to a Scizor Bullet Punch. We see its Life Orb Scizor. It doesn't quite get knocked out by Politoed's Weather Ball. On the other hand, Lantern Volt Switch, still only chipping Politoed a little bit. Politoed playing a really tanky game, probably with a lot of bulk in those leftovers, that is proving hard for the Farmboys to deal with so far. Torracat comes in. It's threatening all kinds of stuff into these two. I mean, take your pick. Intimidate, drop into Scizor immediately is nice. Reuniclus switching back out to Lantern. Scizor goes for Protect. Torracat fakes out the Reuniclus slot, hits Lantern. But hey, the Politoed does go for a Water attack finally, and we do get confirmation of Water Absorbed Lantern as it does get healed. Real battle of the tanky water types here. But Scizor is not in a great spot against Torracat. It goes for a Bullet Punch into Torracat anyway. It's a Protect and drops to a Weather Ball. Lantern goes for Surf, doesn't do very much to Politoed, and now Rain is gone. We see Lantern and Reuniclus as the last two Pokemon on the Farmboy side. Torracat just clicking a Flare Blitz into Lantern, not very much damage. We see Terra Water Reuniclus, so the Torracat is maybe not very dangerous in the rest of this game, but what is dangerous is that the Politoed just clicked Perish Song, and the Farmboys are on their last two Pokemon, and the Minccinos are not. Reuniclus can set Trick Room, sure, but the Minccinos probably have Protect on everything. I mean, we'd already seen it on both of these Pokemon, so they'll kill a turn of Perish Song that way, and then they just need to Protect with, I don't think we've seen what Pokemon is in the back, but yeah, they can let these go down here, and they just need to Protect with the last Pokemon, and they win, because it hasn't been Perish Song. They actually hard switch Mimikyu in here, but with Disguise, it's obviously not going to be knocked out by Lantern Surf. Politoed gets knocked out by Reuniclus' Psychic. Yeah, Mimikyu gets through the turn just fine with Disguise. Another nice tech for the Perish Trap mode. And Torracat and Mimikyu can just Protect here. Again, you could have just let Torracat and Politoed go down. And then Mimikyu could come in and accomplish the same thing. And I don't know As I always say, I don't know what tiebreakers this league has, if any, after game differential, so I actually don't know whether Pokemon differential matters. But it worked out to the same thing here. And Mimikyu does close out that Perish Trap endgame very nicely. Over to game 2, will we see more Perish Trap? Will we see Politoed and Lantern tanking blows back and forth once again? Let's see. It's Clawitzer leading with Politoed against Reuniclus and Lantern. Politoed just switches out this time. We get Torracat coming in. Torracat's not going to enjoy taking a rain-boosted Surf if that's what happens. Reuniclus goes straight for the Terra Water. There is the Surf. Does a lot to Torracat, but not a KO. Terra Dragon Clawitzer once again looking probably to collect those Terra boosted Dragon Pulses. I think I missed the Absorb Bulb on Reuniclus last game. I'm sure it did activate and I just didn't notice. What does Absorb Bulb do? Does it boost special attack if you're hit by a water type attack? I think that's probably right. That's an interesting tack, especially with Lantern throwing off those Surfs. But I was wrong. It is not Dragon Pulse. I mean, it doesn't matter. I guess Dragon Pulse actually would have KO'd here, right? Because it would be Terra boosted, so I guess they should have clicked Dragon Pulse. But Reuniclus gets crit with a Dark Pulse and is already almost off the board, and it gets flinched by the Dark Pulse. So kind of a wash, I guess, which move was better. But yeah, that is a big crit, and big crit flinch for this game. Lantern actually knocks out its teammate trying to surf the Torracat. Torracat protects around it. Lantern takes a big Dragon Pulse. Scizor coming in now. It's of course threatening the Bullet Punch into Clawitzer. And does get the KO here. Politoed takes a Chilling Water. That slot was Torracat, right? So Lantern no longer attacking its teammate. Maybe they just wanted to get rid of Reuniclus so that Scizor could get in safely. But yeah, Chilling Water is not going to do much to Politoed. It doesn't care about the attack drop. Mimikyu comes in here and it just protects. Scizor takes a lot again from that Weather Ball. And with Life Orb damage, it only gets one more chance to attack in this whole game. Did some good damage to Politoed there, but is it enough? We see the Hisuian Electrode come in. I mean, Hisuian Electrode is an offensive threat to Politoed, and the Farmboys have already used their Terra. So Politoed is not in the safest position to click Perish Song or something here. I mean, this isn't where you perish anyway, because the Farmboys still have 3 Pokemon left. But also, Politoed could protect while Mimikyu sets Trick Room, and then the speed interactions are kind of flipped around on Electrode. Unless you go for the KO into Mimikyu here, which is totally plausible, I think, with like Electro Web and Surf. But Electrode just goes for Substitute on the Politoed's Protect, so it takes the attack from Mimikyu just fine. Okay, Mimikyu's Disguise is broken. Discharge still does not get a para. Electrode protecting now, as does Mimikyu. Politoed goes for Ice Beam into Electrode. Politoed is kind of being let back into this game, maybe not. That was a Discharge crit, and that still didn't KO. Lantern is looking great in terms of tankiness in this set, but really not establishing itself as an offensive threat. Electrode's switching out now. What are the Farmboys trying to position around? I'm not sure. Is it just that they need to preserve Electrode as a fast threat so they can't let it take a attack from Mimikyu before it's done its role? But that Electrode played very passively and then got out of there, and Politoed, which looked vulnerable to me, has just been sitting on the field this whole time. Mimikyu now gets a Sword Stance up. Scizor comes in, but it gets knocked out by an Ice Beam. Politoed is now KO'd by Lantern's Discharge, so, I mean, look, maybe this is the Electrode endgame that you wanted. Torracat is low. You can protect around Fake Out this turn. The Mimikyu is scary, though. I doubt that Electrode has the damage to just one-shot it, unless you get a crit. We'll find out. It's protect from the Electrode, not from the Lantern. So if Lantern had gotten an attack off here, that could have knocked out Torracat and maybe made a big difference to the Electrode calc into Mimikyu. But Mimikyu clicks the Play Rough into Lantern. I think that protect on Electrode was not terribly hard to read. And Shadow Sneak does a lot. Doesn't KO, but it will KO now. Electrode knocks out Torracat. But yeah, it needs multiple protects to avoid dropping to another Shadow Sneak, and it doesn't try. Farmboys maybe just hoping that was a high roll on the first one, but Mimikyu does knock out Electrode, and the Ontario Minccinos take the 2-0 win, taking the league by storm so far in their debut season. 2 sets left, I think. We've got here Drago's Children versus the Foraging Furrets. Drago's Children have likely looking Trick Room mode with Dusclops setting Trick Room for Macargo and Quagsire and, I don't know, maybe Diplin. Screen support potentially from Klefki or some other kind of support. I don't know. It could be running weather support. Diplin is interesting. I don't necessarily know what anything specific does here. On the Furret side, we've got the Staraptor. Yeah, both these game plans are pretty mysterious to me. I mean, Staraptor, Brambleghast suggests Tailwind, Windrider stuff to me. And then I don't know if Drago's Children have Intimidate on their roster. They certainly didn't bring it here. But of course, Bisharp could help cover for that. The Wheezing, I guess, shuts down Klefki's Prankster and Diplin's Super Sweet Syrup, but that doesn't seem super important here. What's really interesting is they brought the Rhyhorn, and I don't know what that's for. Hopefully we'll see it do something. Skarmory leading with Wheezing against Dusclops and Kleavor. Kleavor, of course, putting in a ton of work last week. It was the Week 1 KO leader, as it fully swept one of the games. We'll see if it can keep that going. It doesn't look like it's in the most favorable position for it here. Skarmory going straight for an Iron Defense. That could be very strong into Kleavor, and boosted Body Press. I mean, Quagsire gets unaware. So Quagsire could kind of ruin Skarmory's day. Macargo and Trick Room ruin Skarmory's day, but of course Macargo is weak to Body Press outside of Trick Room, at least unless you Terastallize it. So multiple ways this could go. But yeah, Iron Defense. Kleavor goes for Stone Axe into Wheezing and misses. Wheezing taunts the Dusclops, so it would deny Trick Room here, except Dusclops shows the Mental Herb, gets the Trick Room up. Strong start to this game for Drago's Children, despite the Stone Axe miss. And we didn't see Wheezing click Will-O-Wisp into Kleavor. Remains to be seen whether it has that option. Dusclops going for Phantom Force, avoiding a taunt from Wheezing once again, and of course it will get an attack off here. Skarmory still just setting up that Iron Defense. Kleavor gets the Stone Axe into Wheezing. And Phantom Force does only 5% to Skarmory. We see that it's weak armor Skarmory, so that's an interesting tech to bring with Iron Defense. You do kind of throw away your own defense boost whenever you take physical damage, but of course Skarmory is so boosted already. It's still at +3 defense right now, and it's getting the speed boost, which maybe it doesn't want in Trick Room, but Trick Room doesn't last forever. Wheezing does finally land a taunt into Dusclops, and it takes another Stone Axe. So I guess if Kleavor landed that first Stone Axe, then Wheezing wouldn't be here anymore. But Kleavor surviving a +3 Body Press. It is kind of funny that the weak armor, I think, made the difference to that calc. Dusclops going for another Phantom Force, and Wheezing showing the Pain Split, taking HP away from its partner to help itself stick around longer. That is an interesting tech. It'll take another Stone Axe thanks to that, and Kleavor will drop to a Body Press. Wow. Is this Phantom Force coming out into Wheezing? Skarmory protects. Phantom Force, of course, breaks Protect, but it's still not doing much damage. I mean, they are starting to take away the Iron Defense boosts, but more importantly, Macargo can just click Heat Wave here. Make the most of that last turn of Trick Room. Macargo actually not that bad an offensive threat, just terribly slow and has terrible weaknesses, but Wheezing and Skarmory were both very vulnerable to that Heat Wave, and they are both KO'd. And we see it's Bisharp and Rhyhorn in the last 2 spots for the Furrets. What on earth the Rhyhorn... No, I had an idea, but... Bulldoze? Does Rhyhorn get Bulldoze? Weakness Policy Bisharp? I know you can't have your own ally activate Defiant. I've tried that myself before. I don't know. I'm stumped. Okay, we see Diplin come in. We see the Super Sweet Syrup. Fire Bisharp, so we'll take that Heat Wave now. Goes for a Throat Chop into Diplin. Doesn't do very much. Diplin... We know that Dusclops isn't carrying the Eviolite, so Diplin probably is. Macargo goes for Terra Grass here, so it doesn't have to be afraid of ground-type attacks anymore, or fighting. It just clicks a Heat Wave. Doesn't do very much to these 2 Pokemon, but Macargo could easily be carrying Earth Power, and at the very least it probably has Rock Stab. Rhyhorn goes for its own Body Press into Macargo. Does not do terribly much here. Macargo actually switches out to Dusclops. We see that it's Choice Band Bisharp and Eviolite Rhyhorn. So the Bisharp is choice locked into Throat Chop, and yeah, that Diplin took that nicely now that we know that it's banded. The Furret's really going hard for these Body Press games, but Dusclops Well, Dusclops would be in a position to feast on that if not for the threat of Throat Chop Bisharp. But if they're trying to go for Iron Defense Body Press setup a lot of the time, makes sense to why Bisharp is a core part of this team. Dusclops does drop to a Throat Chop, but Dipplin will knock out the Rhyhorn with Giga Drain. And yeah, I don't know that... Oh, it's Life Orb Dipplin? It just takes a banded Throat Chop that well? Wait, I didn't know Dipplin was built like that. Anyway, Magcargo survives the Throat Chop. Dipplin does a bunch with Life Orb, Dragon Pulse, and we do see the Power Gem from Magcargo. Despite some really cool attacks from both sides, Drago's children pretty handily take game 1. How will the Foraging Furrets deal with the Mental Herb Dusclops Trick Room setup in game 2? Let's see. Weezing and Skarmory leading once again against Dusclops and Quagsire this time. Quagsire, the only Pokemon different from before. Skarmory going straight for the Iron Defense again. Weezing taunts the Quagsire. Of course, that does free the Dusclops to set up Trick Room. And now you still, if you want to taunt Dusclops, you still have to taunt it twice now, right? The Mental Herb hasn't been broken. So if it has some other support moves that it didn't get to show in game 1, it will get the chance if it wants to show them now. That said, the Quagsire liquidation into Weezing, if that's what Quagsire is bringing to this position, it doesn't seem like very much. Especially since we still don't know whether the Weezing has Will-O-Wisp. I think it's probably unaware Quagsire, so it's not afraid of boosted Skarmory Body Press. That's probably why it's here in this position, but yeah, I don't know. Drago's children might have to kind of pivot around to get some proper offense on the board, but we'll see. They do actually pivot as the Quagsire switches out to Dipplin. Dusclops goes for Disable into Skarmory, turning off its Iron Defense for a while, and Weezing does now show the Will-O-Wisp, but it connects with Dipplin instead of Quagsire. Dusclops switching out to Magcargo. You really don't want Magcargo to take a Body Press, but if the switch works out, then it's a very strong offensive position, as we know that Magcargo is a massive threat into the Furrets in Trick Room, and it has multiple turns of Trick Room left. Dipplin lands a big Dragon Pulse into Weezing. Magcargo gets taunted. I don't think it cares about that, and Dipplin will take a Body Press. It'll survive. Magcargo and Dipplin look so well positioned here. Dipplin actually switches out to Dusclops. Magcargo looks so well positioned here. Skarmory protects. Fair enough. Magcargo will get the KO on Weezing. What do the Furrets have? So it's the last turn of Trick Room. Oh, I know what the Furrets have. It's the last turn of Trick Room. You want to do something to prevent the Magcargo from just claiming KOs before Trick Room ends and Magcargo is slow and vulnerable. It's the Bramblegast. The Bramblegast is almost certainly carrying Wind Rider on this team. We don't know for sure that it is. It could be Infiltrator, but it's very likely you run Wind Rider, especially with Star Raptor to set Tailwind. Heat Wave is a wind attack. Bramblegast is immune to Heat Wave. That's why so many bird Pokemon have gotten Heat Wave over the years. It is classified as a wind attack. So Magcargo, it could KO the Skarmory with a Heat Wave here, and I'm not even certain that isn't worthwhile. But it also gives Bramblegast +1 attack with no drawback. And I'm actually not sure how you beat Bramblegast after that. I mean, the rest of the Pokemon here don't seem very threatening into it, so yeah, maybe they did just need to switch Magcargo out there to not lose to Bramblegast. That's a really good adjustment from the Furrets if that's how it worked out. Bramblegast goes Terra Ghost though, and Dusclops went for Phantom Force. And a little bit like that Dive Bird situation with the Cramorant in Week 1, Dusclops moves before Bramblegast now. Next turn it will move after Bramblegast, so we'll take full advantage of that semi-immunity with the Trick Room over. And of course you can't protect around Phantom Force because it breaks Protect. You can switch Bramblegast out, but also Dusclops just isn't that big an offensive threat. I'm talking this up, I don't actually know that it's going to do very much to Bramblegast, and they can switch Bramblegast out, but we'll see how they play around it here. Bramblegast goes for Poltergeist into Dusclops. Dusclops does at least prevent Bramblegast from doing any damage this turn. We see Skarmory switch out to Bisharp. Poltergeist goes into Quagsire. Quagsire just gets knocked out by that. Ooh, the Phantom Force does actually almost KO Bramblegast, but not quite. And Bramblegast and Bisharp are putting out a fair bit of offensive pressure here. We have not seen a Terra, so it is possible that Dusclops gets another Trick Room up here, and then Magcargo can Power Gem into the Bramblegast, so I still think this could go either way. Dusclops protects. Oh, Dusclops doesn't go for Trick Room, it protects. We see that it specs Magcargo, so yeah, it really had... That actually makes it really difficult to position against these two Pokemon, right? Because I said that Magcargo could knock Bramblegast out with Power Gem. The problem is then you're locked into Power Gem against Bisharp. You want to be able to Heat Wave Bisharp. But Dusclops... Oh, and also, I thought Magcargo would protect while Dusclops set Trick Room, but Magcargo, of course, doesn't have Protect because it's running Choice Specs. Instead, it's Dusclops that protects, and Magcargo just gets KO'd. And we do see the vulnerability of some of these Pokemon outside of Trick Room here. Dipplin will come in, but Dipplin is pretty low. Skarmory, and it doesn't really have a way to threaten Skarmory. We see the Terra Ground, but that's not going to add a way to threaten Skarmory, and it drops to Poltergeist anyway. And Dusclops does set up Trick Room now, but it doesn't have enough damage by itself to win this game. Yeah, it's just going to lose to Bisharp. And Skarmory even showing Brave Bird, so Skarmory has a way to damage Dusclops. I guess that's good to know if you're Drago's children, but you will be going to a Game 3 here. You're going to have to figure out how to deal with all of that. The Magcargo has, to me, been the most interesting Pokemon so far, because it is such a massive threat under Trick Room, but very exploitable outside of Trick Room. And the Bramblegast adjustment in Game 2 for the Furrets also made Magcargo pretty exploitable, because it can't just freely switch out of clicking Heat Wave and boosting the Bramblegast. So yeah, the Specs Magcargo is in some danger here, but we'll see what Drago's children do in Game 3. We see Weezing and Skarmory once again leading, this time against Klefki and Magcargo. Interesting. Skarmory switches straight out to Bramblegast, probably trying to catch a Heat Wave boost. Klefki manages to set up Reflect before it gets taunted, and we see that Magcargo, all this time I was talking as if it didn't have a single target Fire-type attack. It had never shown one, but we actually do see it click Overheat here. Overheat, not a wind attack. Big damage into Bramblegast, would KO if not for the Focus Sash. So there was an adjustment for the Bramblegast available after all. Magcargo, that said, does have to switch out here, because it's just not well positioned after taking a special attack drop and with Trick Room not up. Dusclops comes in, doesn't take too much damage. Klefki will knock out the Bramblegast, so if you can get Trick Room up, then Magcargo is so strong the rest of the way now that Bramblegast is removed. And there's not even a Rhyhorn to resist its fire attacks. Dusclops protects here as Kleavor comes in. We see the Skarmory switch in. It will take an X-Scissor very nicely, but what is stopping this Dusclops from setting Trick Room? Kleavor gets burned, but I think the win con here is Magcargo. That said, you have to get Magcargo onto the field still. Skarmory has not been clicking Iron Defense, so the Stone Axe into Weak Armor is actually weakening it pretty nicely. We might see the Phantom Force come out into the Skarmory slot. But the Trick Room turns are starting to kind of disappear. Klefki switching in for Kleavor. Magcargo still not on the board. And in a way, it's kind of beneficial to the Furrets that they're not threatening a ton of damage into the Pokemon immediately in front of them, as Klefki takes that Brave Bird nicely. But Skarmory is getting worn down. And now the Magcargo hard switches into the Dusclops slot. Avoids Will-O-Wisp nicely. Of course, it couldn't be burned anyway. Skarmory going for Iron Defense this turn. No damage into Magcargo. It only has one turn left of Trick Room, though. And it does a lot of damage to Weezing, but nothing into Skarmory through Protect. So all that positioning, and Magcargo didn't really get to take full advantage of the Trick Room, didn't get to do a ton of damage, but it does take that body press from defense dropped Skarmory really nicely. I think that's -1 defense. Magcargo really doesn't take too much at all from that, and it gets the burn with Flame Body. We never saw the Magby get a Flame Body burn in that earlier set, but we do see it from Magcargo here. Stone Axe into Weezing for some chip. Clear Smog is just not doing much to Magcargo. It's resisted and just not very strong. And Magcargo outside of Trick Room, determined to prove me wrong. I said it was so good in Trick Room and so bad out of Trick Room. Doesn't matter. No Trick Room, no problem. There's just not enough damage on the Furret side, and Magcargo gets 2 KOs with a Heat Wave. That said, well, Drago's children have 4 Pokemon left, but they still have to beat this Bisharp, and Magcargo is their best way to do it. That said, Bisharp Terra Fires to take the Heat Wave. That does make it weak to Stone Axe. Kleavor, of course, is burned. I don't know how much Stone Axe would do. Maybe we'll find out on another turn, but not this turn as it misses. Heat Wave also misses. Okay, sure. Magcargo switching out to Dusclops. It'll be able to change moves now. Iron Head knocks out Kleavor, but now you can set... You can go Reflect Trick Room or Thunder Wave Trick Room. Dusclops could have been flinched by that Iron Head. It actually goes for Disable. Apparently I don't understand the game plan at all. But the Bisharp is choice banded, so it can't switch moves. So Disable just kind of wrecks it. Yeah. I was thinking about Trick Room to get Magcargo in, click Power Gem. This is still a pretty weird endgame still, but as long as the Bisharp It's under the effect of Disable. All it can use is Struggle because it's Choice Banded. And misses the KO on Dusclops there. Is of course doing a lot of damage to itself. Dusclops Phantom Force avoids the attack. And for much as I talked about Dusclops Phantom Force not doing much damage, it does get the final KO of the set. Good stuff. And there is finally just one set left. I do not know how I went so long on this one. Usually one set takes me about 10 to 15 minutes. I guess when I go back through the footage and add things in, I'll find out just what happened this time. But all right, the Azurbe Chatots versus the Big Mode Bellibolts to close out week 2. I'm not going to do too much team preview talk because I don't know what's going on here. We see on the Bellibolt side, the very dangerous Oranguru Bellibolt duo again. We see possible Sun stuff as they have Houndoom and Victory Bell, so potential boosted fire type attacks and Chlorophyll respectively. There's also a Cramorant. There's also an Earthworm. I don't know. Cramorant's cool though. I really liked that Gulp Missile KO last week. Maybe we'll get another one. On the Chatot side, so they have what looks like a Bastrodon setup mode again, right? They have a Lekid for redirection. Porygon probably sets Trick Room. They can also set something up with Passimian. They have Alchemy, able to click Decorate into either Bastrodon or Passimian. So they have that setup option as well. It really looks like in week 1, they want to get one Pokemon going, hard to remove, doing big damage, power through. I don't know how Charjabug fits into that. Because there's no big special attacker on this team, unless it's like a Calm Mind Alchemy, which actually it could be. You don't have to, just because you're bringing Alchemy doesn't mean you have to click Decorate. Maybe Alchemy is meant to be a setup win con, with Charjabug enabling it, and again, Elekid and Porygon supporting it as well. Quite possibly, let's find out. Earthworm leading with Houndoom against Elekid and Porygon. Is it Follow Me Trick Room? Follow Me. Elekid takes an Overheat. Nice. Iron Defense on the Earthworm, and we do see the Trick Room. Okay. Another Follow Me from Elekid. Porygon goes for Shadow Ball, does a third to Earthworm. Earthworm now gets a +4 defense. Elekid drops to an Overheat. +4 defense and -4 special attack. Charjabug coming in. That's a lot of little baby unevolved Pokemon on the Chatots side. Houndoom switching out, resetting the special attack drops. We see Victory Bell come in here. Struggle Bug from the Charjabug. Okay, so in Trick Room that'll go before Houndoom. It'll lower its special attack. Lowering Victory Bell's special attack might also be valuable. Victory Bell doesn't have to run special attacks, but it certainly can. Another Shadow Ball, chipping this Earthworm down. Eats its Citrus Berry, but if it wanted to click Shed Tail, it still couldn't. That said, why would you click Shed Tail when you boost it up to +4 defense? Instead, we just see a Body Press that knocks out Porygon, and is immediately threatening Bastrodon, although we haven't yet seen the Terra from the Chatots. So if Bastrodon has a Terra type for this, better click it here. Ground is not... I mean, Ground is helpful to taking Body Press. Bastrodon has a lot of physical defense, and it's gone from double weakness to neutral, but, you know, it's no Ghost or Fairy here. We'll see what the Body Press does if it comes out. The other thing about Terra Ground is if you're running ground coverage on Bastrodon, this is definitely Earth Eater or Earthworm. There's no reason to run Sand Veil, so you don't get any additional damage from that. Earthworm going for the Terra Fairy is interesting here. I guess that helps it take a Body Press, though of course that does make it weak to Steel Stab. But Bastrodon is probably not running Body Press and Steel Stab and ground coverage, so I don't know what's going on here. But it does take that Body Press very nicely at +4 defense and resisted. The Wild Charge from Charjabug actually does more, though still not very much. Body Press from Earthworm does a little over half to Bastrodon, and we see a Strength Sap on Victory Bell. And yeah, pretty soon Charjabug will just be asked to win this game by itself, and I don't think it will be able to. Bastrodon showing Earth Power. What is Bastrodon's special attack? I've had Bastrodon on a team in this league, and I don't remember. Earth Power is a surprise for sure. And that makes me think it doesn't have Steel Stab. I mean, it took a Strength Sap. It could still have Steel Stab. I just think Earth Power is more worthwhile here. But you don't want to click Body Press into the Victory Bell because it's resisted. You can't click Earth Power into the Earthworm. Yeah, the Bastrodon's just in a tough spot here. Earthworm gets poisoned by Charjabug's Poison Jab. That's kind of fun. But Bastrodon does drop to Body Press into Giga Drain. And I don't think Charjabug, especially with Trick Room over, is winning this game by itself, especially with Houndoom coming back. Victory Bell just heals up with a Strength Sap. Struggle Bug does weaken Houndoom's damage, but that Overheat is still going to hit really hard. It does a little bit more than half, actually, with Charger Bug presumably holding an Eviolite. Charger Bug took that better than I expected, even with Houndoom at -1. It's still Struggle Bugging. That bug is still struggling, but it's just not doing much damage. And we see Cramorant is last for Bellibolt. It takes a Struggle Bug, but it shows Brave Bird. That's not weakened by Struggle Bug, and Charger Bug does finally drop. So that Orthworm was a menace in game 1. Bastrodon didn't match up well into it. Alchemy is not very likely to match up well into it, although we haven't seen Alchemy's set. Maybe there's a mode with the Passimian, but with the Terra Fairy on Orthworm, I mean, I guess it depends on what coverage you have for Passimian and what kind of setup you let the Orthworm do. But I would not be surprised to see a Passimian lead from the Chatots in game 2. Let's find out. Orthworm and Oranguru against Passimian. There it is. And Elekid. So we'll find out what the Passimian does. By the way, Passimian versus Oranguru. Sun and Moon version exclusives. You'll have to see it. Orthworm goes immediately for the Terra Fairy. So yeah, we're probably going to get some info on this Passimian here. Elekid taunts Oranguru. Okay. It is just... Passimian does just rip a close combat. Does a fair bit, but it is resisted now, and it shows. Orthworm starts setting up that Iron Defense. Passimian switches out. We see Alchemy come in. Orthworm gets taunted, but it is already a +2 defense, and it gets Earth Eater healing from the Bulldoze Oranguru. Honestly, I didn't see that coming until early in Game 2, and I don't get any credit because I didn't call it out before it was clicked, but yeah, that is another nice combo, especially in Trick Room for the Bellibolt. So some decent Oranguru synergy with Orthworm there. Body Press doesn't do too much to Alchemy, though. Elekid redirecting with a Follow Me, but of course Oranguru, there's every chance that Bulldoze is the only attack it has. So it's not redirected. Orthworm can be redirected, though. Maybe you can avoid a Steel-type attack into Alchemy. It does go for Heavy Slam. Doesn't do too much to Elekid. But Alchemy going for Dazzling Gleam doesn't do a whole lot back. And the Chatots, I think, are really just struggling to find enough damage here, but we'll see. Bulldoze doesn't quite KO Elekid, so Orthworm's attack will be redirected again. Heavy Slam does get the KO here. Alchemy with another Dazzling Gleam. I mean, it is starting to wear these Pokemon down. We also see that we saw it last turn, but I'm noticing now that it's Life Orb Alchemy, so it is more of an offensive set and not so much support focused. That said, it does click Helping Hand to boost the damage from the Passimian, and that Iron Head almost KOs Orthworm. We'll find out in a second whether it flinches. Orthworm eats a Citrus Berry and gets Earth Eater healing, so man, Orthworm bouncing back nicely actually from that Iron Head damage. Oh, but Passimian with the Defiant gets an attack boost from Bulldoze. That's very, I mean, that's kind of the most obvious ability to bring on Passimian, but it is still very smart when you are facing multiple kinds of Bulldoze synergy, right, that they could be bringing with the Bellibolt or the Orthworm. Passimian taking advantage of that Bulldoze very nicely. Of course, it also can benefit from being hit with a Victory Bell Strength Sap. So, good stuff there. And it does get the flinch on Orthworm. Victory Bell switching in. Orthworm out now. Of course, Orthworm is throwing away those defense boosts, but we see a double switch into Victory Bell and Houndoom. Potentially a big opportunity here for the Chatots. Though Alchemy does protect, will Passimian throw off an attack? It throws off an Iron Head into Houndoom. It's resisted, but it still does a lot. And now we see Terra Fire Passimian. We see Power Herb Solar Beam Houndoom. Cool tech, but it is resisted by the Fire Terra. Doesn't do very much damage. And yeah, Strength Sap Victory Bell is a net attack boost to Passimian. Victory Bell just drops that +3 Iron Head. Life Orb Alchemy takes out the Houndoom. And the Orthworm is back, but without its defense boost. It will get Earth Eaten back up to 82%, but how does it take this Iron Head? Not very well. And Passimian might be slow, but now Bastrodon is here, and it shows Wide Guard. So I think that confirms no Steel Stab. But it does stop the Bulldoze from the Oranguru. And Passimian went nuts in this game. That Passimian really was just the right adjustment to what we were seeing from the Big Mode Bellibolt in Game 1 and shut it down nicely in Game 2. That said, we know now that it's Terra Fire Passimian. It is vulnerable to the Cramorant. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Cramorant come back in Game 3. But the only way to find out how this ends, whether Passimian will pull through, whether I'll get that Gulp Missile KO for the second week in a row, is to watch the game. Cramorant does lead here with Oranguru against Elekid and Passimian. Oranguru goes straight for a Terra Ghost. Cramorant for a dive. Yep, Passimian U-turns out. That is now resisted. We see Alchemy come in, and Oranguru did have another attack all this time. I was pretty well conditioned by the way Game 2 played out to think that it had no attack other than Bulldoze, but it does now show Psychic Noise. Doesn't do a ton to Elekid, but that does change things knowing that it has that option. Oh, okay, Aurora Veil stops heal block. That's what that interaction was. Elekid would normally be heal blocked by Psychic Noise, but not so because of the Aroma Veil. Sure. Elekid with the Follow Me will take this dive from Cramorant. Survives. Alchemy throws off Dazzling Gleam. It does get Gulp Missiled for some chip. It also takes Life Orb chip. And there's the Bulldoze from Oranguru. Knocks out Elekid. Chips and slows Alchemy. Passimian is back, but it's still in a tough spot you would think about against this Cramorant. It actually takes 95% from Brave Bird, but it does survive and knock out Oranguru. And we see the Dazzling Gleam from Alchemy knock out Cramorant. So Passimian has outlasted Cramorant in this game, but it still remains to be seen what Pokemon are in the back and whether Passimian has enough left for them, especially with Alchemy at lowered speed. We see Orthworm and Victreebel. Alchemy goes for the Terra Fire this game. Passimian just goes for a knockoff into Orthworm, gets rid of that Citrus Berry. Sludge Wave from Victreebel. Nice spread move. Partner is immune. Many such good synergies on the Chatots side. Of course, Oranguru would also be immune to that with Telepathy. Passimian does drop to that, but Alchemy survives it thanks to the Terra Fire, but doesn't survive with Body Press. And the last Pokemon is Bastardon once again. Since the Chatots just used their Terra, they don't have the Terra Ground available to take a Body Press from Orthworm here. They also get Strength Sapped. I don't think Earth Power will do very impressive damage into Victreebel. They Body Press Orthworm, it survives. And Victreebel, nope. Victreebel does some damage, but Orthworm closes this out with a Body Press. So some really interesting, we saw some interesting synergies from the big mode Bellibolt this week. They have a really scary team with not just Oranguru and Bellibolt, but also we saw some great combos here with the Orthworm, the Victreebel, the Cramorant. There's still the Manual Sun option to really get Victreebel and Houndoom going. So it's looking like a really nice draft on their part, and they're using it very well so far, of course, starting the season 2-0. But a lot of fight this set from the Azurbe Chatots. The Passimian put in a ton of work in Game 2. Just fell a little bit short in the end. But there are still, of course, 6 weeks left in the regular season. Hopefully I won't talk about each individual one of them for an hour and a half, but if that's what I feel like doing, so be it. See you next time. Actually, see you Monday with my Week 3 set. It's going to be an interesting one for sure.